If you've never had an allergic reaction on a date, let me tell you, it's a hell of a way to make an impression. There I was, 68 years old, sitting across from a woman young enough to be my daughter, okay, fine granddaughter if we're being mathematically honest, sweating profusely, my face swelling up like an overinflated balloon, while she casually sipped her cocktail, completely unfazed. "You sure you're all right?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I wheezed in response, nodding like a man who had absolutely no control over the situation. This was not how I imagined my grand return to the dating scene. Then again, I hadn't imagined much at all. I'd been forced into this nightmare by my well-meaning but slightly deranged best friend, Richard, who had decided that my life was too boring and set me up on a blind date with his much younger yoga instructor. "Live a little, Harry," he'd said. "You'll thank me later." As I clutched my chest and debated whether I was experiencing the early signs of cardiac arrest or just catastrophic embarrassment, I mentally composed my final words to Richard. None of them were kind. It had started fine, or at least as fine as a date that was doomed from the start could be. We met at a trendy rooftop bar where the average age of the clientele was not in my favor. As I shuffled in, looking like someone's dad who had wandered in by mistake, Charlotte, yes, that was her name, greeted me with a smirk that immediately told me she found this whole situation amusing. "This is either the best idea I've ever had," she said, looking me up and down, "or the absolute worst." In hindsight, I should have been the one saying that. Everything went downhill when the bartender asked if I'd like to try their house special infused cocktail. Now, I'm a whiskey man. Neat. No nonsense. But something about the way Charlotte raised an eyebrow at me made me think, all right, old man, show her you've still got some edge. So I ordered it. I took one sip and immediately realized three things. It contained something spicy. Very spicy. My body does not handle spicy well. I should have updated my will before coming here. My throat closed up, my nose started running, and I broke out in a sweat so intense that I looked like I had just run a marathon in a sauna. Charlotte, for her part, remained alarmingly unfazed. "You okay?" she asked, sipping her drink like a woman watching an entertaining live performance. I tried to respond, but my voice had vanished into the ether. Instead, I gestured wildly to the bartender, pointing at my throat. "Water?" he asked. I nodded furiously. "Ah, our infused water pairs great with that cocktail," he said with a proud smile, handing me something greenish and suspicious looking. It was cucumber infused. Who in their right mind drinks cucumber water during a medical emergency? Charlotte just chuckled. "You don't do well with spice, huh?" Through sheer willpower, and the last remaining dignity I had left, I managed to gasp out, "I was proving a point." She laughed. "And what point was that?" I paused. I had no answer. And that was when I realized something. She wasn't laughing at me. She was laughing with me. This date was a disaster, but she was enjoying it. And against all odds, so was after nearly dying from a cocktail, I considered faking an emergency to escape. A simple, "Oh no, my house is on fire," or "I forgot to feed my cat, I don't have a cat," would have sufficed. But Charlotte wasn't in a rush to leave. She was enjoying herself. Which was surprising, because up until that moment, everything about the date had been a complete disaster. "Feeling better?" she asked, stirring her drink with one perfectly manicured finger. I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure. My body was still confused. Half of it thought I had eaten a live grenade, the other half was convinced I was in some kind of bizarre stress dream. "So," she said, resting her chin on one hand, "why exactly did your friend think setting you up with me was a good idea?" "Because he's a lunatic," I answered without hesitation. She laughed. "Fair." For a moment, I studied her. She wasn't just young, she was the kind of young that belonged in places I had stopped going to 20 years ago. Fancy restaurants where the portions were microscopic. Clubs where drinks came with sparklers. Yoga studios that charged you $20 to stretch. She was also looking at me like I was some kind of peculiar artifact. Not in a bad way, just like I was something rare that she wasn't sure if she wanted to examine or put in a museum. "So, how's the dating scene for someone your age?" she asked, taking another sip of her drink. "I wouldn't know," I admitted. I haven't been on a date since people still left voicemails. Her eyes widened. Wait, so I'm your first date in? Longer than I care to admit. Wow, she said, sitting back. That's kind of adorable. Adorable? A grown man being compared to a puppy was not the confidence boost I needed, but here we were. I needed to regain some dignity. Alright, what about you? I asked, shifting the spotlight. Why did you agree to this? She shrugged. Curiosity. I figured, worst case scenario, I'd get a free drink and a funny story. I raised an eyebrow. And what's the verdict? She smirked. Well, you almost died in front of me, so it's definitely not boring. Great. I was officially a walking punchline. Before I could respond, a voice interrupted us. Excuse me, sir? I turned to see a waiter. Yes? We, need you to settle your tab. I blinked. I haven't even asked for the bill yet. The waiter hesitated. Right. It's just that, the card you gave us was declined. Charlotte burst out laughing. I frowned. That's impossible. I pulled out my wallet and checked. My card wasn't there. Neither was my cash. My stomach dropped. Oh, I groaned. I'd left my wallet in my other jacket. The one I had purposefully swapped out at the last second because I thought this one made me look younger. A decision that, in hindsight, was the second worst one I'd made that evening. Charlotte, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes, waved the waiter over. Don't worry, I've got it. Oh, the shame. You don't have to do that, I protested. No, let me, she grinned. After all, you've already suffered enough. The waiter left, and I sat there, utterly humiliated. So, Charlotte said, still smirking, not only are you wildly unprepared for dating, but you also don't carry money? I usually do, I grumbled. Look, I'll pay you back. She waved a hand. Relax, Grandpa, it's fine. I choked. Grandpa? She laughed. Oh, calm down. It's cute. Cute is what people call things they don't take seriously, I muttered. She tilted her head. And does that bother you? Yes. Yes, it did. But before I could say anything, the situation got worse. I stood up to leave, and my knee promptly gave out. Now, let me be clear, I am not an invalid. I go on walks. I stretch. I even own a bicycle, though I haven't ridden it since Bush was in office. But apparently, my body had had enough of this evening, because the second I put weight on my leg, something in my knee popped. Charlotte watched as I grabbed the table for balance. Oh my God, she said, covering her mouth. Are you serious right now? Yes, I hissed. I had gone from a confident-ish man on a date to someone who now needed assistance just to stand up. Charlotte, being the absolute menace that she was, found this hilarious. Do you want me to call an ambulance? She asked, barely holding back laughter. No, I gritted out. Help you to the car? I can walk. I could not walk. Instead, I hobbled, one hand clutching the back of a chair, the other gripping my pride like a man hanging off a cliff. Charlotte followed behind, absolutely delighted by this turn of events. You know, she said casually, I expected this date to be interesting, but this is beyond anything I could have hoped for. I glared at her. Glad to be of service. She grinned. You are kind of adorable when you're grumpy. I didn't respond. Mostly because I was using all my energy to not collapse in public. When we finally made it outside, she leaned against the railing and watched me, amused. So, what now? She asked. Now, I had to somehow regain some semblance of self-respect. I straightened as much as my treacherous body allowed. Now, I find a way to redeem myself. Her lips curled into a smirk. That's so? Yes, I said firmly. This is not how my grand return to dating is going to be remembered. Charlotte tilted her head. All right, then. Impress me. And just like that, the challenge was set. I had to prove, somehow, that I wasn't just some washed-up old man who couldn't even survive one date without humiliation. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I wasn't about to let this be my dating legacy. No one tells the story of Harold Thompson, the man who nearly died from a cocktail, forgot his wallet, and fell apart at the knees before the night was even over. No. This needed fixing. Charlotte, however, wasn't making it easy. So, what's the plan, Grandpa? She asked, leaning against a taxi stand outside the bar. I ignored the nickname. A second date. A proper one. She raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. I can do better than this, I said firmly. She tilted her head, amused. All right. When? I thought fast. Tomorrow. Her eyebrows went up. Eager, aren't we? I just want to make sure my next impression isn't. I gestured at myself, still slightly out of breath from hobbling out of the bar like an injured animal. She considered this, then smirked. Fine. Tomorrow. I nodded, trying to look confident. Good. I'll text you the details. Looking forward to it, Grandpa. She walked off before I could protest the nickname again. The second she was gone, I pulled out my phone and dialed Richard. He answered on the third ring. Tell me everything. I need help. I knew it. He sounded far too pleased with himself. I'm serious, Richard. You made it through the whole date? Barely. And she agreed to another? Yes. He whistled. Jesus. Didn't see that coming. Neither did I admitted. But I need to make sure I don't screw up the second one. Richard was silent for a moment. Then, you realize dating someone that young isn't like dating someone our age, right? You need to. I need to not collapse in public again. Right, he said, chuckling. Step 1, don't die. Step 2, plan something she'll actually enjoy. I was thinking dinner. No. Boring. Dinner is boring now? For her? Yes. I sighed. Then what? Something fun. Something that doesn't make you look like an old man. I resisted the urge to throw my phone. Richard, I am an old man. That's exactly why you need something to distract from it. Bowling? Mini golf? Something with energy. I considered this. Bowling. I can do bowling. Perfect. I'll text you if I need more help, I said, hanging up before he could make another comment about my age. The next evening, I arrived at the bowling alley 10 minutes early. I had done everything to make sure this date went smoothly. Wore a jacket I knew had my wallet. Stretched for 20 minutes so my knee wouldn't betray me again. Researched cool things to say so I wouldn't sound like someone's dad trying to make conversation at Thanksgiving. I was ready. Then Charlotte walked in. She had her hair tied back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a hoodie with some band logo I didn't recognize. She looked relaxed, comfortable, like this was a normal evening out. Bowling, huh? She said, looking around. You disapprove? She shrugged. Didn't think you had it in you. I ignored the jab and gestured toward the lanes. Let's see if you can keep up. I had assumed that, like most people, Charlotte would be decent at bowling but not particularly great. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. She annihilated me. First round, strike. Second round, another strike. Third round, I knocked down one pin and she nearly choked laughing. All right, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. I have a confession. I frowned. What? I was on a bowling league in college. I stared at her. You hustled me? She grinned. You never asked if I was good. I looked at the scoreboard. Her score was already triple mine. Do you want me to give you pointers? She offered. I groaned. No. Come on, she teased. Wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself again. I sighed. Fine. She came up behind me, adjusting my stance. Her hands moved my arms, guiding me on how to hold the ball properly. It was distracting. Okay, she said, stepping back. Try now. I rolled the ball. It veered straight into the gutter. Charlotte burst out laughing, nearly falling over. I turned to her. I hate you. She wiped her eyes. No, you don't. I grumbled and sat down. You know, she said, sitting next to me, you take this whole proving yourself thing really seriously. I looked at her. Wouldn't you? She tilted her head. Maybe. But it's interesting. What is? She studied me for a moment. You actually care. I frowned. Of course I care. She shook her head. Most guys don't. They either try to act like they're too cool to try, or they make everything about impressing me. And what am I doing? She smirked. You're just trying not to look like an idiot. I sighed. How's that going? Not great. I laughed, despite myself. She finished her drink and leaned back. I like that, though. I turned to her. Like what? That you're actually here. In the moment. Most people aren't. I didn't know what to say to that. For a while, we just sat there. She was still way too young for me. This still didn't make any sense. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just there. And somehow, that felt like enough things were going well. Too well. That was the problem. After the bowling alley humiliation, Charlotte and I started texting. Not just occasional, awkward messages either, full conversations, the kind where you forget time exists. She'd send me memes I didn't understand, and I'd reply with jokes she called dad tier. We argued over music. She listened to things that sounded like construction sites. I preferred bands where the lead singer had at least seen a barber. Then there were the calls. She called me when she was stuck in traffic, when she was bored at work, when something funny happened at the grocery store. She liked talking to me. And I liked talking to her. That should have been a good thing. But the more we talked, the bigger the problem became. This wasn't normal. A woman like Charlotte wasn't supposed to be spending her time with a man like me. Not in any way that made sense. At first, I told myself it was just novelty, she was amused by the older guy trying to date situation. Then I thought maybe she just liked the attention, someone to entertain her between real dates. But that theory fell apart when she canceled plans with her friends to go to a museum with me. A museum? Are you testing me? I asked when we met outside the entrance. She grinned. What makes you think that? Because people under 40 don't just wake up and decide to spend their Saturday looking at statues. She shrugged. Maybe I'm cultured. You literally laughed when I said I still use email. She smirked. That's because email is ancient. Like you. I sighed. Let's just go inside. We walked through exhibit after exhibit. She asked questions. She listened to my long-winded explanations. She made snide comments that made me laugh harder than I wanted to admit. And then, the real moment of truth. We reached the modern art section. Now, I don't hate modern art. But I do hate paying $20 to look at a blank canvas with a single blue dot in the middle and being told it represents societal disillusionment. Charlotte, of course, loved it. We stopped in front of a piece that looked like a pile of crumpled aluminum foil. This, she said, arms crossed, is genius. I stared at it. It's trash. No, it's commentary on trash. It's literally actual trash. She gasped dramatically. You have no taste. I have plenty of taste. I just don't think stacking garbage on top of more garbage is worth an entrance fee. She laughed. God, you're hopeless. But she was smiling. and so was I. That's when I realized something. We weren't dating like two people testing the waters. We were dating like two people who had already decided. And that scared the hell out of me. After the museum, we grabbed dinner at a small restaurant nearby. And that's when I saw them. Her friends. I recognized them from photos she'd sent. Two women, both her age, both staring at me like I was a new species they'd discovered in the wild. Charlotte, one of them said, eyes flicking to me. Hey. Charlotte grinned. Oh, hey. What are you guys doing here? We live near here, the other one said, still staring at me. I suddenly became aware of everything: my gray hair, the lines on my face, the way I was dressed like someone who still thought leather jackets made him look younger. Charlotte, of course, was completely unfazed. Oh. This is Harold, she said casually. We were just grabbing dinner. The two friends exchanged glances. I knew that look. That was the "is this a joke?" look. The "we're going to talk about this later" look. Charlotte saw it too. We should all get together sometime, she said brightly. Yeah, one of them said, not meaning it. Definitely. They left a minute later, and I exhaled. Charlotte smirked. You look like you just survived a job interview. Did I pass? Jury's still out. I forced a chuckle, but the mood had shifted. We both knew it that night. As I lay in bed, I replayed the entire interaction in my head. Charlotte was confident, but was she naive? Did she actually like me, or was this just an experiment to her? More importantly, was I about to become someone's midlife crisis story? I could already imagine the conversation years from now. Oh yeah, I once dated this guy who was, 68. It was fun for a while, but obviously, it was never gonna last. That thought made my stomach turn. The next morning, I did something stupid. I sent her a message. Are you sure about this? She replied immediately. About what? I hesitated. Then I typed. Us. It took her longer to reply this time. And that's when I knew I had just made a mistake. I shouldn't have sent that text. I knew it the moment I hit send. It was the kind of message that wasn't meant to be sent. It was meant to sit in your head while you paced around your apartment, muttering to yourself like a lunatic. Charlotte took 15 minutes to respond. That was long enough for my brain to invent every worst-case scenario possible. Then, finally, her reply came. That's a weird question, Harold. Call me. Call her? Absolutely not. If I called her, I'd have to actually talk about this like an adult, and I much preferred the time-honored tradition of pretending nothing was wrong until it collapsed on its own. So, naturally, I did nothing. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then Charlotte sent another message. You're ignoring me. That's cute. Call me. She was handling this too well. I, on the other hand, was unraveling. Finally, at 11:42 p.m., my phone rang. Charlotte. I could have let it go to voicemail. That would have been the smart thing to do. Instead, I answered. Hello? You're an idiot. Hello to you too. Seriously, Harold? What the hell was that text? I sighed. I needed to ask. Why? I hesitated. Because this doesn't make sense. She was silent for a moment. Then. To you. Yes, to me. Another pause. So, what, you think I'm just doing this for fun? I don't know, I admitted. Well, let me clear it up for you. I wouldn't waste my time if I didn't want to be here. But why? Jesus, Harold. She exhaled. Do you realize how annoying it is when someone tells you, hey, I really like spending time with you, but it doesn't make sense, so let's overanalyze it until we ruin everything? That shut me up. Do you like me? She asked. Yes. Then what's the problem? You know the problem. Oh, here we go, she muttered. Let me guess, the age thing? My friends looking at you weird? The fact that you can't eat spicy food without almost dying? All of it. Well, too bad. Because I don't care. I blinked. You don't? No, she said. You do. That's the problem. I rubbed my face. Charlotte. I swear to God, if you break up with me over math, I will find you and slap you. I laughed despite myself. Then she softened. Harold, I like you. I chose you. Stop trying to talk me out of it. I exhaled. Okay. Okay? Okay. She paused. That was too easy. I don't trust it. I sighed. I promise, I'll stop overthinking it. You better. Silence. Then, she added, you know, if you dump me, I'm keeping the bowling championship title forever. That's not how that works. It is now. I smiled. And just like that, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I wish I could say that conversation solved everything, that I woke up the next morning completely free of doubt, but that would be a lie. The truth is, my brain is stubborn. It doesn't let go of things easily. Charlotte said she didn't care about the age difference. That should have been enough. But words are easy. Reality is harder. That reality hit me a week later when she invited me to a party. It's just a casual thing, she said. Some friends, a few drinks. You should come. I hesitated. Your friends don't exactly love me. She sighed. They don't know you. They know enough. She rolled her eyes. And whose fault is that? You barely talk to them. I had no response to that because she was absolutely right. Just come, she said. If you hate it, we'll leave early. I sighed. Fine. The second we walked in, I knew I had made a mistake. Loud music. Too many people. The kind of place where conversations required shouting. Charlotte squeezed my hand. Relax. I nodded, but I didn't. Then I saw them, her friends. The same ones from the restaurant. They were sitting in a corner, drinking, and the second they saw us, they started whispering. Charlotte noticed too. Want a drink? She asked, ignoring them. Sure. I followed her to the kitchen, trying to act normal, but my brain was in full meltdown mode. Why was I here? I was not built for this. I was a man who appreciated quiet. I liked conversations that didn't involve yelling over bass-heavy music. And most importantly, I hated being the center of attention. Because that's exactly what I was. I could feel the stares. The silent judgment. The same question in everyone's head. What the hell is she doing with him? Charlotte handed me a drink. Better? I nodded, even though I hadn't taken a sip. Then, one of her friends walked over. A guy. Tall. Mid-30s. The kind of person who still had the metabolism to drink beer without consequences. Charlotte, he said, smiling like a politician. Didn't expect to see you here. She smiled back, but it was forced. Hey, Ben. Ben glanced at me, then back at her. So, this is serious, huh? Charlotte's grip on my arm tightened. Yep. Ben nodded, then turned to me. Harold, right? I shook his hand. That's me. So, how did this happen? He laughed like it was all a big joke. What's the story? Charlotte's face darkened. Ben. It's fine, I said. Then I turned to him. I met Charlotte on a blind date. It went horribly. She somehow found that amusing. And now we're here. Ben chuckled. Ha! Wild. There was a long pause. Then, he smiled. So, how do you keep up? I knew exactly what he meant. Charlotte stiffened. Ben. It's a fair question, I interrupted. I don't. Then blinked. I don't keep up, I said. I don't try. Charlotte does yoga. I have bad knees. She listens to music that sounds like a car crash. I like jazz. She drinks cocktails with names I can't pronounce. I drink whiskey. I shrugged. But somehow, it works. Ben studied me. Then, he smirked. All right, fair enough. He walked away. Charlotte exhaled. Jesus. I'm sorry. I shook my head. It's fine. No, it's not. She glared at Ben across the room. They don't get it. I sighed. They don't have to. She looked at me, surprised. You mean that? I nodded. I do. And I did. Because for the first time, I wasn't worried. I wasn't questioning if this made sense. I wasn't looking for an exit. I was just happy. And that was enough. Richard nearly had a heart attack when I told him Charlotte was moving in. What? He shouted into the phone. She needs a new place, and I have the space, I said. Harold, she's 32. I'm aware. This is crazy. Probably. There was a long pause. Then. Does she have a sister? I laughed. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared anymore. I was just looking forward to whatever came next.